Her and EU, a European podcast on gender equality, brought to you by the Martens Centre with Loredana Teodorescu.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this new episode of Her and EU, a podcast on gender equality and women's role in the society. I am Loredana Teodorescu, and our special guest of today is Nina Gregori, the Executive Director of the newly born European Union Agency for Asylum. Ms. Gregori, thank you so much for being with us.
Hello, Loredana. Hello, of course, to the audience, and thank you very much for this kind invitation.
Thank you, Ms. Gregori. I would like to start with your own personal story. You served within the Slovenian Ministry of the Interior before being appointed then the Executive Director of EASO, now European Union Agency for Asylum, which is really a crucial one in Europe. So looking back, what have been the ingredients of your success and how being a woman has affected your career?
Yes, it's a very interesting question, and indeed I'm happy to share, I would say, a bit of my experience. As you know, I really worked all of my professional life in migration and topics related to migration and asylum, indeed. And of course, being an executive director of now the European and the only European agency for asylum is the peak of my career. So I'm happy that I was able to achieve that. But when you ask me about the ingredients of the success, I can definitely say hard work. I think that's very important. Then I would say respect to the others. Of course, that means, of course, to let's say to your colleagues, to the ones that are basically you've been surrounded. You are surrounded every day, and I think also enjoying working with people. I like to communicate with people. I like to really contact people, to listen to people, and to talk to people. So I think it's quite important in our line of work. And then definitely a positive attitude, because you can only imagine in migration world there are always challenges, and I think you just need to kind of keep yourself positive. You need to remain positive, otherwise, it's really difficult. And in that line, I will also say a bit of persistence. I think a bit of a positive, stubborn needs to be present there. Otherwise, if you gave up quickly or too quick, it's difficult. And then, of course, the support of your family, that really matters.
Thank you. And being a woman has affected your career. Do you feel that this was, sometimes an advantage or an obstacle?
I would say in my case, was always an advantage. It's very interesting because, of course, that I come from Slovenia, and historically, and I was born still in Yugoslavia, so that was a socialist country. But when it comes to the gender equality in Yugoslavia, women after the Second World War, so meaning my grandma and even before, they needed to contribute to build a new society after the war. And I think that in this respect, it really helped much. That the level of gender equality in Slovenia was always very, very high. So I think this is definitely a positive outcome of the difficult, although socialist times. And I think that then, of course, also then when Slovenia became independent, it was never a question for us, for the girls, to go to school, to get university education. This was already normal, even with my parents or in their time. And I think that, of course, helped much. I always worked in the fields, as I said, of migration, with that also in the fields of law enforcement. And this was predominantly always men's, let's say, playground or the field of work. And usually there are, of course, gentlemen who are middle-aged or even, of course, before the retirement. So quite influential and important ones. But for me, really, that was never an obstacle. I think that in many cases, this was an advantage. But I think that as a woman, you just need to place yourself in the right position and in the right and proper role. as I said, respect is important, but then of course, I think you also need to understand how to express, of course, let's say also your experience, the knowledge, and in a way, how to contribute. And with that, as I said, now as a woman, for me, that definitely was an advantage. I would not say an obstacle. Yeah.
Yeah, and when it comes to women leadership, I would say that the European Union seems ready to lead by example. Have you ever felt the need in your organization to prompt for change, for instance, introducing specific measures to promote equal opportunities?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Let me first agree with your I would say sentence when you said that indeed the European Union does appear to be prepared, I think, to lead by example. I think that's really a positive development, and I think that of course the recent election of Madam Roberta Metsola to the presidency of the European Parliament is in a way a case of point. I'm happy for her. Of course, I'm also happy because she comes, let's say, from a small country, and I know her also personally. She's really dedicated, hardworking person, and I am happy that indeed she was successful. She was elected directly, so also this is something that is, I think, very important to mention. And indeed, we increasingly, I think, see more and more women at the helm of the EU, of course, such as definitely the President of European Commission, Madame von der Leyen, and of course also in the ECB, Madame Lagarde. I mean, half of the European Commission is also female, so this is, I think, great. There are also my colleagues in European agencies, of course, ladies, and DG Home, for example, is led by Madame Pariat, and then we have, of course, also in our case, Madam Commissioner, so Ylva Johansson, also a woman. So I think, I mean, if you take a look at from my perspective, it's really a lot of women in very influential places, and I think that's good. But indeed, of course, I think that we still can do much, and this is something that we always need to bear in mind, us as girls, us as women, but also I would say European Union generally. I read recently, I mean, my colleagues presented this to me, that in 2021, there was a report on gender equality in the EU, because also us as an agency, we of course need to be acquainted with them. And indeed, European Commission recalled that the Council of Europe recommended that the 40% of political decision makers should be women. So for us, of course, the progress to equal representation in society, I think, matters. No, but when it comes to UAA, so when it comes to our European Agency for Asylum, I can only reiterate, and I'm happy to say that half of our management board members are female, and that's among our staff. So the staff of the agency, 60% are women. So I think that even with that, well, in a way, we have, let's say, a nice result, something to show also to the others. And indeed, I like to work with women's colleagues. I think that sometimes there are, let's say, when it comes especially to the difficult decisions, I think they, in a way, see the world a bit differently, and we can relate. And then I think it's a bit easier sometimes also, indeed.
So you are already an example, let's say. So I'm curious to know a little bit more also about your specific work at European Union Agency for Asylum in relation to women. We know that men and women are exposed to different types of risk and vulnerabilities during the different stage of migration. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? I mean, what we mean by gender dimension of asylum?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think it's very, very relevant question. And also discussions should be ongoing in Europe, because while the gender is not specifically referred to in the definition of a refugee, it is widely, I would say, accepted that it really does play an important role. Because, of course, you see that the type of persecution or harm suffered, it is a lot of times also connected with gender. Before, of course, women and girls arrive in Europe, many of them have faced different forms of violence, whether this is sexual violence or abuse, exploitation, or of course discrimination. And it is not a secret that in many parts of the world, women are much more, let's say, vulnerable than men. And of course, the Common European Asylum System establishes an obligation, of course, to identify those applicants who might require special procedural guarantees because of their age, because of their sexual orientation, because of their gender. And I think that is very, very important. That's why, of course, when it comes to when we discuss about the procedures of asylum, then of course there need to be a safeguards, and there are already in Europe safeguards in the member states in place, as of course per adequate interview conditions. Then of course we the member states have trained, of course, female staff that are available to assess the claims of women in the crucial, and that's very crucial for the consideration of the, of course, ending of the procedure. And then also we have male family members that in a way can be excluded from the procedure because, of course, there might be, let's say, circumstances of the outcome that we need to, of course, take care of. And then we also have the special accommodation that needs to ensure, of course, the safety for women and girls, as well as the social programs that can focus or are focusing on the female empowerment. So I think that in this, let's say, basket of Common European Asylum System, when it comes to especially reception and procedural guidelines, so the instruments are already there, and the majority of member states is there, are implementing those. So, and of course, our agency is helping with a lot of toolkits and tools to really implement and improve also that.
So you mean that this is already reflected in the new mandate and agenda of your agency?
Yes, correct. Because also before, as being European Asylum Support Office, so EASO, of course, we have done that together with the member states. We've prepared those guidelines. We've prepared a lot of training activities. So the training curriculum that also envisaged of course, the vulnerable groups, focus on that. So indeed, yeah, we're just continuing to do that. And in fact, EAA will try to, let's say, of course, also make steps forward in this direction.
Great. And do you think that the European Union is doing enough on that when it comes to the gender dimension of asylum, or it could be more ambitious? So I have in mind, for instance, the example of Afghan women who we know are particularly under risk now and are more likely to reach Europe to seek protection. So what role can play your agency in this matter?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that, of course, member states are trying to address that. But as I said under the previous question, so our agency supports European authorities in their efforts in identifying, assessing, but also, of course, responding to the special needs of applicants for international protections. We are developing a lot of, as I said, practical tools, such as for example, vulnerability toolkit. We also have a lot of so-called thematic meetings. We have over 40 networks that are dealing with different issues and questions. We invite the member states, we invite international organizations, we invite also experts to those sessions. And we want to, of course, address the issues such as the child marriage, trafficking human beings, female, of course, genital mutilation and gender-based violence in international protection or in asylum cases in Europe. We try to offer a wide range of trainings, as I said, to asylum and reception officials. And of course, yes, they are happy to attend. And so I think that this work goes into the right direction, but there also needs to be awareness among our population, so European population, as you said at the beginning, Loredana, and I do hope that with that we can contribute also as an agency.
Definitely, I think that's really, really important, and you are doing already a good job in terms of communication. So now let me conclude with a last personal question. Today, as a woman leader, you can be considered also as a role model. Was there anybody who inspired you throughout your life?
Yeah, well, as a role model, thank you. I mean, it's a big word. I think it's a very important one. So I do hope that at least I can inspire my children. I mean, I have a son and a daughter, and especially, yes, I would like to inspire them, or at least hopefully they will find me as a role model. But I grew up in a very nice and very encouraging environment. So I think that I would have to say that indeed my parents and family have been quite influential for, of who I am or where I am. And in this respect, when it comes to family, I really need to, in a way, put an emphasis to my grandmother. She was the mother of my mom. She suffered so much through the Second World War as a girl. But then she always, in a way, broke through. She was always so encouraging and real inspiration, I think, not only for me, but also for my brother and the other, I would say, family members, because she never gave up. So I think that's, it's a thing that I think it's, kind of a stage with me. But there are, of course, many women that, in a way, have been revolutionary in their field of work, like Marie Curie, for example. I think that she lived in very difficult times for women, but then she never gave up, all right, in a way. And there are so many women that are hidden in the history behind men, which probably, have been very influential and have been, we know that through some, of course, the stories, the beautiful books. So I think that, it's good for young women also to see a bit of a history, because I think that, there's always an inspiration for all of us. Yeah.
Thank you for reminding us also those women. Ms. Gregori, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your personal story, and for giving us also an insight on the role of your new agency. Thank you to the Martin Center for making this podcast possible, and thank you all for listening. We will be back soon with a new episode of Her and EU, so stay tuned.
Thank you.
That was today's episode of Her and EU. Subscribe to our podcast for more.